Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your host, John F. Thomas, and welcome back to the JT Effect. I have an amazing episode for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about, is America on the verge of a civil war? And it's going to be a deep dive. It's going to be a deep dive. I have a very special guest for you. Hasn't been on my show before, first time on my show. His name is Jonathan W. Cross II. He is a founder and president of Dauntless Tactical Training Centers of America. He has one specifically in Memphis, Tennessee right now. I believe it will be branching out, but I'll let him talk about that himself. But before I bring him in, I would like to show you what he actually does. So let me play for you and show you who this person is before we really get into it. So just give me 1 second so I can. All right.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Cross, one of the primary instructors here at Dauntless Tactical Training.
And I'm Verge, also one of the primary instructors here at Dauntless Tactical Training.
We're here at our training range where we have the healthiest, safest, and one of the most comfortable training environments in the Mid-South. We serve Memphis, West Tennessee, Eastern Arkansas, and Northern Mississippi, providing premier Tier 1 tactical training for individuals, families, institutions, and law enforcement and military units. Because we train here on the outdoor range, it's much safer and healthier than training on the indoor range. You have the ability to train more dynamically.
Stand guard! As well as being an instructor here at Dauntless Tactical, I'm also a registered nurse in the state of Tennessee. And I know that many of you are concerned about your safety and well-being during this time of COVID-19. But I explain to you that we are practicing social distances here in our training facility. As you can see, that we have our table set in the safe area to where you will have the social distancing necessary. We have hand sanitizer available, and you have space, as well as just being outside.
All right. So that gave you a taste of the gentleman who was standing on the right that was talking about Dauntless Tactical Training. They've been doing an amazing job. He's actually, you know what, I'm not even going to speak. I'll just have him explain himself how Dauntless Tactical Training has been doing and who he is. Jonathan, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, John. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know you're extremely busy with your business, of course, and especially during this cover season. Actually, I wanted to ask, like, has that impacted you any during the pandemic with this?
Well, obviously, COVID has impacted every industry, every business. It has infected, not infected, it has affected us both positively and negatively. The first part of the spring, we pretty much lost the entire training season just because people didn't know enough about the virus. And so we were shutting things down because we were trying to keep people safe. And then as more information came out, then we opened the training facilities back out. And as you can see with the with video, we took some specific steps at making sure that we socially distance people, but still were able to train people. We've done a lot of training with smaller groups this year that we've done in the past. In the past, we would train anywhere from 12 to 24, 25 people in a class. But this year, we've actually stripped that down where we're training 8 to 12, 8 to 16 people. And we're breaking up classes over a couple of ranges. The summertime obviously gets really hot, and so we didn't do as much training in the summer. But now the fall is kicking back up. And what's been really interesting is that in the last 7 or 8 months, more guns have been sold than at any other time in history. And so, and about 60% of those new sales are first-time gun owners. And so there's a tremendous uptick in new shooters looking for training, so much so that we've opened up a new indoor training facility that's a 360-degree shoot house here in the city to basically be able to meet that demand and at the same time be able to train people in a way that's more dynamic than going to a regular shooting range, because our training facility is different. We are not a gun range. We are a training facility, a training center, and we have a 360-degree shoot house. And so we can do some things that you can't do in the regular range, because really going to the regular range is generally, for most people, an entertainment outing. You're not getting coaching there. You're not getting instruction. And from a class perspective, most of them are what I call puppy meals for gun permits. They're basically just, giving people a lot of tabletop instruction, collecting their money, sending them out the way, and saying, okay, now you can go get your permit, but the people are not really getting training. Our focus really is on training, so much so that our mission is really to make everyday people advanced defenders of life. And the only way to become an advanced defender of life, you really have to become brilliant in the basics of firearms marksmanship. Advanced only means brilliant in or mastering the fundamentals. So, yeah, it is. So it has created new opportunity for us. There have been challenges, but it's just what's going on in the marketplace has just opened up new opportunities for firearms instructors.
And it's really a blessing, man. And I'm definitely glad that you have been able to adapt and having the foresight to see what's going on, and even seeing what other gun centers, gun ranges, what they're doing, and what you can do to provide a better quality training experience. So right. I mean that is amazing. When I get down there, I wanted to probably next year when I really get a block of time, I definitely like to come out and train with you, because I was looking and seeing like your training center, and I was just like, man, he probably whooped my butt, like really, but in a good way, It's like he probably get on me. Nope, that's not to hold it, but it is sharp. That's how you get sharpened, because you need somebody to really get on you to improve and better protect yourself, with the gun. So I can definitely see that you're doing that.
Yeah, well, our focus is positive motivation, positive instruction. So it's not so much we're going to give you quality instruction. We will instruct you how to do it, show you how to do it, let you do it, and then correct you as you're doing it so that you do it properly. And it becomes a matter of muscle memory so that you can do it the same way every time. We have a general philosophy, and I'll describe it this way when it comes to the concept of shooting. Shooting is not about the gun. So people think that shooting is about the gun. Shooting is not about the gun. Shooting is about everything you do before the gun goes bang, and everything you do after it goes bang and before it goes bang. So the gun, every gun is more accurate than any individual who can shoot it. So I can place a gun into a vise, and if I have well-calibrated ammunition, I can place that gun in a vise, use a mechanical device to press the trigger, and when that bullet leaves where it hits, it'll leave a hole in the target. And I can put another bullet in it, and that bullet will go through that exact same hole, which means the gun itself is really accurate. Inaccuracy comes as a result of what we do, how I grip the gun, how I place my finger on the gun, what happened with the gun when I touched it. So in other words, everything that happens with the gun is based on what you did. The moment the gun goes bang, the bullet is going to hit wherever the gun was pointing at that exact moment. But in reality, we change what happens with that gun. So I'll give you an example. I'm gonna grab I have a training gun right here. But I have a trainer right here, and this gun has no ammunition in it or what have you. But if I hold this gun, so I'm gonna point it at the camera. So if I hold this gun, this is one of our professional training guns. It's a Glock 19. But if I hold this gun, notice what happens when I press the trigger. You see the gun is moving. That's because I have my finger just on the edge of the trigger. If I put my finger too far in, notice what happens when I pull the trigger. The gun goes to the other side. But if I put it straight on the trigger, I am pressing it back. Notice the gun stays flat. That's because I know exactly what my finger does, how it applies to the gun. All right. Now, there's some other elements of how I grip the gun, how I place my support hand on the gun. All of those play a part. Now, watch this. If I squeeze the gun, watch these fingers here. Notice, you see what happens? My finger here is not on the trigger, but just by me squeezing the gun is moving, right? So if at that moment I press the trigger, the gun moves a 16th of an inch. A 16th of an inch at 20 to 30 feet is 4 inches off the target. You see? So 1/16 of an inch here equals 4 to 8 inches at distance. That's the difference between hitting your intended target or hitting someone else and hitting the wrong person or destroying some property. So literally, shooting is not about the gun. Shooting is about what I do, how I grip the gun, how I present the gun, that I have my sights lined up appropriately. It's everything that I do. So that means that I must master how I handle the gun. So as an instructor, I teach you how to properly pick up the gun, how to properly put your finger on the gun, how to properly press the trigger versus pulling the trigger, how to deal with the recoil of the gun so that your follow-up shot is right on, how to align the sights. So if I'm looking at this gun, I got a rear sight and a front sight. They must be in perfect alignment. So I teach you how to do those things. And a lot of those things are both mental and mechanical, right? So we have to create a convergence of mental acuity as well as mechanical or physical execution. So in our center, we make sure that with every client, we take the time to give that type of training. It's as a matter of fact, here's the way I describe it. If you've ever seen the movie Enough, and with Jennifer Lopez, she plays this character named Slim, and her father, Jupiter, sent her to a place to where she can learn to defend herself, right? So Dauntless Tactical Center is the place where you come to meet that guy. You see, you come to meet that guy. Right. So we teach you how to defend yourself with both the firearm and with hand-to-hand skills.
Man. Yeah, thank you, sir. So for everybody tuning in, I am speaking with Jonathan W. Cross II. He is the founder and president of Dauntless Tactical Training Centers of America in Memphis, Tennessee, currently right now. So if you are in that area and you definitely would like to have some better training, or if you're in another area of the country, his centers will be popping up. He will be popping up around America. So definitely feel free to reach out to his on his website, and look at the prices that they have, the videos, and it really goes into depth. If you missed earlier, I played a video of their training. They have a big facility where they will be giving you very, very in-depth training. It's not just a gun range. They're really giving you training that you need to save your life or save someone else's life, basically. So, but for everyone, also, before we really dive into the questions, for everyone that's tuning in, please hit the like button, like, and share this so that way, because we're going to dive deep into a really important conversation. The election is tomorrow, but I know a lot of people have been wondering what's happening with America. And I'll throw this question to you, Jonathan. So there have been countless videos surfacing of Trump supporters clashing with Biden supporters, Biden supporters clashing with Trump supporters. And sometimes it's just arguing, other times it's becoming violent. Many people said they have never seen anything like this before in modern history during an election process. So should we be concerned about it, or is it just something that will just pass?
So I think we have to look at that at both a micro and a macro level. So within our own spaces, our own communities, and as the greater community and the greater state and the greater nation as a whole. It is the nature of people to be in conflict at times. So we think about it. We have three choices when we live our lives. I can be a recluse and keep to myself. I can be in harmony with people, or I can be in conflict. Those are the three choices, right? So if I'm not a recluse, then when I'm engaging with someone, I'm either in harmony or I'm in conflict. And we see that whether or not, people who support the Cowboys versus people who support the Steelers, you get them in the same place, they either can be in harmony about it, or they're going to be in conflict about it, or they're just going to make a joke. In the world of politics, the stakes are so high that, generally speaking, when we have two diametrically opposed political positions that, like we're seeing now, so there's no play in the middle, everything is at the extreme, we can't help but see a high level of conflict, right? So now, whether or not that conflict will remain at the rhetorical level versus, spilling over into the physical level, remains to be seen. What we have seen is that there is some rhetorical conflict, and in some situations there are some skirmishes, right? And people are, because people are motivated by different interests, and people are triggered by different things, different fears, different concerns, or what. So I think on the micro level, we all have the ability to control whether or not we we are engaged in conflict, right? So someone or a group can come to town and decide they're going to protest or make a stink down at City Hall or gather in a park. I can choose whether or not I go and engage with them. I can choose whether or not I counter protest or not. Me personally, I choose not to counter protest. You can do whatever you want to do over there. Just don't show up at my doorstep, right? So you have that option. But then there are people who will choose to counter protest, and so as a result of that, then people get into proximity, and there's the opportunity for conflict. All right, and so we've seen that happen. We've seen that in both with the social unrest that's racially motivated, the social unrest that has to do with whether or not the agents of the state, law enforcement, go overboard, and whether or not the justice system is concerned about what happens to our people group or to what other any other marginalized community. So those conflicts are real. On the macro level, then, here is where I think we have to really be concerned. You have individuals within greater movements who have individual thought patterns and no restraint. All right. So when they don't have restraint, then they can play out, whether I call it a fantasy, a paranoia, or an idea. They can play it out in their mind and bring it to fruition. So I think one of the things that we have to be concerned about then, as a result of this heightened state of conflict, both politically, socially, economically, conflict between classes, So we have some people who are envious of the goods of others, some people who are very protective of their resources, and so feel some kind of way about people who may think that they have a right to those resources or a right to their fair share of those resources or what have you. So we have people who, at various levels, may decide that there may be targets of opportunity. I made a Facebook post, either this morning or last night or something, that says something to the effect that COVID-19 has actually been, a blessing to churches during this time of social unrest, because it has prevented, let's say, groups of people, whether they are black or white, it has prevented identifiable groups of people from aggregating together in a concentrated place where what time they're going to be there, when they're going to be there, what day of the week, and in other words, it has prevented the target-rich environment, because you have the lone wolves who, out of the millions of people who may have who feel some type of way about the racial and social tensions, you statistically speaking, you will have some people who will misbehave, who will act out. But the targets of opportunity don't exist right now because you don't have people aggregated. So going forward, especially depending on how the election turns out tomorrow, you may have some people who feel disenfranchised, who feel cheated, in regards to their candidate. And I'm thinking this is on either side going forward. But I think there will be some people who will be looking for the targets of opportunity, whether they are institutional or whether they are community based, whether they, you may get the lone vigilante, random small group who comes decide that they're going to terrorize, in the same way that you may have a group who may decide they're going to go and maraud in a community, and as a result of that, that community may protect itself, this other community may protect itself, and so there's a potential for something, and there's the potential for somebody, just as we saw allegedly up in Michigan, for some people decide, well, we may need to attempt a coup d'etat, overthrow the government, bring down the power base, the power structures themselves. There aren't enough police officers in the country in any community, there are not enough police officers to deal with all of the crime. So there certainly is not enough of law enforcement presence to stop the lone wolf or the small group actor who may decide to do something. So I think the potential is there. We all have an individual responsibility to make decisions for ourselves about whether or not we're going to be reclusive, we're going to be in harmony, or we're going to be in conflict. Conflict is always, I think, is a natural part of life, and so it is to be expected. The issue is whether or not you are personally prepared to deal with conflict, to resist it, to stay out of it.
Everybody that's tuning in, again, I'm speaking with the founder and president of Dauntless Tactical Training Centers of America, Jonathan Cross II. And we are talking about, just asked him a question about the Biden supporters and Trump supporters clashing, and is this something that we should be concerned about? And thank you so much for your answer. That definitely sheds a better light, a more logical instead of emotional, kind of response that people typically respond to. So I definitely appreciate you for that. Everybody that's watching right now, please be sure to hit the like button so that more people can see this, to show that you appreciate what Jonathan is saying and this information that he is giving us about what's happening and how we can adapt and how we can move forward with this. So please be sure to hit the like button, share this so that other people can see it. And for those who do want to for instance, want to learn how to start your own business, because Jonathan has his own business and is doing well and is thriving. If you want to learn how to start your own business, go sign up at flynubianbusiness.com. That is Fly Nubian Business, and we'll be able to help you with that there. Jonathan, let me go ahead and go to the next question. Again, thank you for answering the other one. So there's been a lot of blame been thrown towards President Trump. So do you feel as though Donald Trump holds some share of the blame for stoking the flames of racism and eroding civility, or is he just a symptom of an even bigger problem here in America?
So first, let me say this here. I don't deal in the realm of feelings. All right, a moment ago, you described my prior answer as logical. I'm more like a Vulcan. I tend to be logical and rational, so I don't really get into my feelings. What I think then is that that's a complicated question, and here's what I mean when I say that. So leadership matters in everything. A institution, I think a family, a community is directly impacted by the culture that is established by the leader. All right. So I think leaders have a responsibility to establish civility when it's right to be civil. And I think at the same time, leaders also have a responsibility to incite outrage when something is outrageous, right? So if there was a rapist in my community who was going around and raping little boys and girls, our community should be outraged, and I would stand if I were the leader, and I would be outraged, and I would slam the desk and say, we must find this person and bring him to justice, right? So in other words, Aristotle said it best: it's okay to be angry. Knowing with whom to be angry, when to be angry, to what degree to be angry, that's what matters. All right. So anger in and of itself is not wrong. All right. So leadership matters. President Trump is the leader of the country. And so therefore, I hold him responsible for establishing a culture of civility, understanding, love, compassion at appropriate time, and outrage at appropriate time. All right. Now, having said that, I think that to a certain extent, he has not fostered he has not been affirmative about fostering the most civil society during his presidency. And I think oftentimes, unlike now, so I don't necessarily subscribe to the media and the pundit narrative that he is stoking the flames of fire, that he is intentionally doing things. But I think that, as those who are religious would say, there are sins of commission and sins of omission. I think his silence on some things, or his hesitancy on some things, make him somewhat responsible for not quelling the flames of not dissent, because we're in America, so we have a right to dissent. I think dissent is good, but I think he's failed to distinguish the flames of conflict when they arise unnecessarily. Now, juxtaposed against that, I think also, though, that the public is being manipulated by pundits in the media under the guise of journalism with punditry that is not journalism. I think there is an agenda behind the proprietors of what has now become the major news outlets, in which to me, the major news outlets used to be NBC, CBS, and ABC. We used to be able to get generally unbiased, news from those sources. But most people are not getting their news from there now. People are getting their news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Those are not journalistic outlets. Those are TV shows that are with pundits, with people giving their editorialized opinions. And I think that there is a, obviously they fall into, I hate to use the words, but I'm going to use them because they're just so ubiquitous in the vernacular. They fall into the liberal and the conservative camps. And as a result of that, I think the people who are behind the institutions that are represented by liberalism and conservatism, both as a political party and as these so-called think tanks and political action committees or what have you, I think they are wagging the tail of the dog. They are manipulating the public such as to create an outrage over things that are really minor. So I think in many regards, while President Trump has not helped himself by, extinguishing flame, by being articulate in such a way as to be able to convey, and I think he probably has a learning disability that, prevented him to developing a large vocabulary. So I think he has a difficulty communicating well rhetoric, and as an orator. And so I think with that, I think he has a limited vocabulary and such. And he may, to a certain extent, lack a certain amount of empathy too. I don't necessarily think that he's cold. He just may not have a lot of empathy. And so I think with that level of complicity with him, and at the same time, the pundits, the media outlets manipulating the people, I think often his words or his lack of words is taken out of context and then used to fan the flames of and hit the trigger points of specific communities, both Black, white, Hispanic, immigrant, civilian, or immigrant and citizen. I think that we are being manipulated. So I won't put my thumb in other words, if I'm going to take out the switch, I'm going to whoop everybody who was in the fight. Not you see what I'm saying? So Donald Trump may need a spanking, but the media needs a spanking, and the public needs a spanking for not being smart enough to realize that we are being manipulated. That's my perspective on that.
Yeah, I definitely feel as though actually, it's funny because Frank W. Johnson, I think you may know him. He was on here before, and he was talking about how news stations aren't really news anymore. It's their opinion, stations. They give their opinions, and they're not telling you the facts. And journalism isn't entirely what journalism used to be, which is unbiased, just facts. Like these are the facts. And this is what we're giving you.
Right.
And even to where I kind of miss. I guess we still kind of have it, but I was telling him back when you would have, for instance, Malcolm X speaking on behalf of a topic, and then you have James Baldwin speaking on behalf of another topic, like Malcolm X speaking about being segregated, and James Baldwin talking about, well, no, we need to integrate because, and they would have their time and space to do that. And Frank mentioned that, you used to have to be cleared before, you were able to do something, be able to talk on that subject, because you had to be knowledgeable about the subject that you were talking about. But he's saying now, just like you were saying, the people behind the scenes, the money behind these news stations are putting people who are paid to speak on behalf of certain corporations and to kind of sway and manipulate the public towards a certain opinion or thought, instead of it being just unbiased, like as news and journalism should be.
So I generally agree with that assessment. There's one point where I would disagree. And the one point that I would disagree is on whether or not a person has to be cleared to be able to speak on a subject. I will not insult the intelligence of any average citizen in this country. I believe that, absent a mental defect or, a mental, a health retardation or something like that. Absent that, I believe that every one of my fellow citizens have the ability, if presented the facts, to intelligently discuss them, even if they're having to figure it out as they're discussing. I think where the problem comes in is these people and these outlets that are disguised as journalists input themselves into the narrative and don't let the sides debate each other. So if you and I are debating, so like right now, there is no moderator in between us.
Right.
Right. And if there were a moderator between us, the best moderation would be, okay, Jonathan, you heard John Thomas say this. What is your rebuttal to that? And instead of the moderator making the argument with John Thomas's statement, right? And so the public then is seemingly having someone speak for it, because we're not just getting the facts, and we are having one side or the other being demonized by the moderator. And so, or you have the moderator pose a question to one side and not pose that question to the other side to give their perspective of it. What the moderator will do is give the person a limited amount of time to respond to the point or to the method of addressing that the other side had. And we don't have debate in between the two. Because if we had debate in between the two, I think a couple of things would happen. Number one, we would establish on the front end that the whole purpose of the debate is for us to get to the ultimate truth. So if you and I agree that our purpose for discussion is to get to an ultimate mutually agreeable truth or position, then we are going to discuss back and forth until we get to that. So if we start with that, then for one, we're recognizing that there must be an ultimate truth. And then it then calls us to be civil with each other, even while debating directly. So just as a moment ago, I said, I generally agree with what you said, but I take exception with this one thing, right? And so my ability to do that and your ability to accept that creates a certain level of civility that ultimately should bring us to a mutual conclusion and understanding, and that brings harmony. Right? But I think the journalistic outlets are not championing harmony. The leaders of the parties are not championing harmony. So the Republican leaders are not championing harmony. The Democratic leaders are not championing harmony. They're positioning and posturing and trying to create leverage to grab and hold power. That's a problem. And the people are being manipulated and riled up against each other and tricked into forgetting that, really, most everything that happens to your life is a personal decision. If I can't earn enough this year, a lot of it has to do with the fact, what educational decisions did I make? What decisions did I make in terms of when I created or offspring? What decisions did I make about getting continuing education? What decision did I make about selling crack on the corner? If I sold crack on the corner and now I'm a criminal, I can't expect that that there's going to be the same financial opportunities to me as a person who kept their nose clean, did everything by the book, and went and got that schoolwork. You see what I'm saying? Regardless of whether they went to college or went to a trade school or went to the military. The personal decisions that we make for ourselves and we make for our family are the ones that really impact us. And so from my perspective, if I make good decisions or if I make bad decisions, I'm not entitled to the product of your good decisions that's in your pocket. I'm not entitled to come stick my hand in your pocket and say, give me my fair share of that. No, I gotta own the fact, man, I was a juvenile delinquent, or what have you, but I can end up going down a whole nother road with that.
Everybody that's tuning in, I am speaking with founder and president of Dauntless Tactical Training Centers across of America, Jonathan Cross II. If you're tuning in, please hit the like button so that more people can see this. If you have any comments or questions, put your comments and questions in there, and I'll try to see if I can see it and throw it to Jonathan if you have any questions for him on any topics that we are talking about right now. And also be sure to share this video so that more people can see this, because we need more conversation like this. This is why I created the JT Effect, to have critical and forward thinking, instead of like everyone being so emotional. I know we're in a very emotional time, but I want to bring on people that can help us see the forest instead of just looking at the trees. So that's why I created the JT Effect, and that's why I have Mr. Cross here with us. Also, for those who want to learn how to manage your money, go to flynubianmoney.com. That's Fly Nubian Money, so you can learn how to manage your money, because he was just talking about decisions that you were making and making good personal decisions in your life, so that way things can be a little bit better. Go to Fly Nubian Money and you can learn how to manage your money. And this is your moment to better your life, because it's all about the little decisions that we make. And yeah, sometimes you can stumble, but you can make better decisions as you go along. And, sometimes we have to own up to the things we've done, but you have to move forward. So Jonathan, back to you. So I have another question for you. So there are a lot of pros and cons with everything. So I'll just ask you just straight up, what are the pros and cons with keeping Donald Trump in office? And what are the pros and cons with having Joe Biden in office if he so wins the election tomorrow?
All right. So let me start with the cons first. Okay. All right. So the cons of keeping Donald Trump in office, primarily for me, I think is one. I think the one con of keeping Donald Trump is that we are pretty much guaranteed to have 4 more years of division, of strife, in constant bickering between the politicians, between the political attacks and the media attacks. I think the politicians and the media will continue to stoke the flames of division and chaos, in terms of the rhetoric. So I think that is the con of Donald Trump. I think the con of a President Biden will be that exact same thing. I think that the divisions that have arisen within the country within the last 12 years, all right, so from the Obama presidency, now including the Trump presidency, and probably to a certain extent some of the Bush presidency too, because Bush, in my opinion, Bush got a little ridiculous with expanding government intrusion into the lives of the population. And so that made a lot of people uncomfortable, and people started pushing back against that. And I think that was where we really saw divisions really starting to pop up, that the government seemed like it was lying to us, and it was lying to us while at the same time spying on us, right? So you have things like the Patriot Act or what have you, that created an uncomfortability for the people in relation to the government. And I think that then that was exacerbated during the Obama presidency and now during the Bush presidency. But notice I listed one con of the Trump presidency, in my opinion, and I said that same con applied to the Biden presidency. But I think there are some additional cons that also apply to the Biden presidency. All right, and uh, and I don't think they apply to the Trump presidency, and, or to a future Trump presidency. And here's why I say it. So remember earlier, for me, I told you I'm facts over feelings. I don't really get into my feelings. It's my thoughts. All right. So as in anything, if you start a company, the company has bylaws. If you start an institution, the institution is going to have bylaws. You start a club, the club has bylaws. If you start a family, if you start a family, husband, wife, there's a discussion at the beginning about what the rules of the family are. My wife expects me that I'm not going to be out all night. That is a rule. That is a fundamental thing in the family. So if I'm out all night, I come in at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's a problem. I am destroying the fundamental understanding of the family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So institutions have bylaws. Religions have bylaws. So Christians, the Bible is the bylaw, right?
Mm-hmm.
Countries have bylaws. The United States of America, our country, the fundamental bylaw is the Constitution. And the Constitution says that it is the supreme law of the land.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things laid out in it that are enumerated in terms of what is the power of the presidency, the power of the Congress, power of the Supreme Court, the power of the states, the rights of the people, what rights the government have had regulated to it, what rights are retained by the people, what rights are retained by the state. So we have a fundamental document. The fundamental document prescribes how it is to be treated. Number one, it is the supreme law of the land. That's what the document itself says. It is the supreme law of the land. The document also says how it can be changed, and it gives the specific methods for changing it. And there's one method: to amend it. So the document does not say that it is a living, breathing document. The document says it is an amendable document, and it says it is the supreme law of the land. And the document teaches us that the government is restrained, that the people are superior. And the precursor to the document, the Declaration of Independence, tells us that government gets its just powers from the people. So the government does not have power. It only gets power as relegated by the people. And the federal government, the state government, the municipal governments, and the courts are all restrained by the document. In my opinion, based on posted policies, projected policies, rhetoric, a Biden presidency is a presidency that will offend the constitutional document. And so as a result of that, that is very problematic, because when you start offending the constitutional document, that means then that a couple things: you start infringing upon the rights of the people, the rights, especially rights that have been enumerated as to be protected rights in the document. So you start infringing upon the right, which is a violation of the Constitution. You start then also going down the road of having one branch of government offend the other branch of government by being an incursion on the rights or the power of that other branch of government, right? So once you have presented a mindset that says that I will ignore or pick and choose what parts of the fundamental document that I'm going to adhere to, not support, but adhere to, and then according to the oath of office, you're supposed to support, protect, and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, right? And I have true faith and allegiance to the same. Once you start violating that oath, you start infringing upon the Constitution with rhetoric and policies and proposals, then what that means to me is that I personally cannot trust you as a statesman or a politician ever, because you will not adhere to your fundamental premise of the country. Fundamental premise of the country: a state is sovereign. The collection of states are sovereign. So therefore, the collection of states is the federal government. That means then the federal government has borders. The borders must be sovereign. All right. The preamble to the Constitution says to promote the general welfare of ourselves and our posterity. Right. So the purpose of the Constitution is to promote the general welfare of ourselves and our posterity. That means the citizens. That does not mean the foreigner. That what that also means then is that we must control who comes in and out at all times. That means that our laws must be respected by both us and foreigners, right? So that means that the tax dollars of our citizens must be treated with respect and must be used wisely, should not be squandered, should not be given to someone else when we have needs here. We must feed at home. So this is a pro. This is a pro to me for a Trump presidency. A Trump presidency means we're going to protect borders. Protected borders means that we are not downgrading the employment or we're not diluting the employment pool of people who need employment here. We are not disenfranchising the vote of marginalized citizens here by diluting their vote with foreigners who've come in illegally and then had babies here that then marginalized, especially descendants of slaves and Native Americans. The two groups, one group didn't migrate here. So descendants of slaves, we were neither immigrants nor migrants. We were brought here as property. So this country owes us to bring us up to a point of equity. It is offensive to me as a Black man then to have my people group still have needs to be brought up to equity and have my economic opportunities constantly put under threat in terms of competition from low-wage workers who are coming to the country illegally because we have a weak border, right? So that is a pro to me for a Trump president. We're going to have a strong border. A further pro is the Trump president to me is going to say we are going to respect the Constitution. So we're not going to be infringing upon people's Second Amendment, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment right. Whereas what we are seeing from the left, liberal, democratic supported media and social media outlets is a squashing and a quashing of freedom of speech. It's a censorship. You see, so no, that post goes against our standards because it offended somebody. The thing is, we have the right to offend. If what you say to me is offensive to me, I can just turn and just choose not to dialogue with you. I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to watch your show. I don't have to read your blog. I don't have to subscribe to your page. I can turn my attention. I can change the channel. I can block. You see, but we are going down a road of one side is supporting the type of policies that squash the very First Amendment, the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, especially since those institutions have become ubiquitous in nature, so much so that they're almost become like public utilities. They are the space for public discourse, but then it's been squashed, right? One side, the Constitution says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It didn't say shall not be infringed unless, shall not be infringed, however, but it says shall not be infringed. One side, a Biden presidency, will infringe upon the right of people when it comes to their firearms right. That's a problem. A Biden presidency will infringe upon people's Fourth Amendment right to privacy, to due process of law, to be safe and secure in their effects and their private possessions and what have you. Why? Because, for example, if you want to press, if the Biden proposes red flag law, he supports red flag laws. In other words, we're going to come take your weapon without due process of law. That is a violation of your Fourth Amendment right to privacy. That's a violation of your Fifth Amendment privacy of due process, and that's a violation of your Sixth Amendment privacy. Right to face your accuser. The government cannot come and do something first before due process of law. That is a violation of the Constitution. And so my point, and I can go on with many things, but my point is that a Biden presidency, a Democratic-controlled presidency, at this point in time represents an attack, an infringement, a violation of the Constitution, which then leaves us open to problem going forward. A Biden presidency also, for me, especially for Black people, and I think for people in general, also leads to a further dependence in mindset of marginalized people group. It keeps us with the mindset that somebody owes us something, number one, that we are not responsible for our own actions, number two, and it keeps us suckling on the government teeth. You see, I'm constantly going to the government's breast for this milk instead of going out there and raising my cow, tilling this land, realizing, you know what, I'm gonna work a little bit of time. I'm gonna save 10% or 15% of my revenue for the next 5 years. And so after 5 years, now I got enough capital where I can go launch my own business. And it does not matter who wants to give me a job or not, right? It does not matter whether or not I qualify for Section 8 or not. I don't need aid for families with dependent children, or I don't need welfare. I don't need an EBT card. If I make the decision, I'm going to get my lesson, stay in school, be smart, and have skills so that I can be employable or I can start my own thing. But if I'm constantly bombarded with this mindset that I need somebody to come save me, then I'm going to forever be weak and subject looking for a savior. We must save ourselves. Black America has, let's say you got the Divine Nine, the Greek institutions, right? Mm-hmm. Black America only controls two institutions: sororities, fraternities, and church. Those are the only institutions we control, right? Those are the only institutions that we control. And those are institutions where we aggregate people together. So therefore, we can aggregate resources and we don't leverage those resources. For example, if there are millions of alphas and AKAs and omegas and kappas and sigma and all, if there are millions of them, why don't we have the Panhellenic Council or the Divine Nine venture capital fund that's got $100 million in it or $30 million in it that can make $500 or $250,000 to $500,000 in investments in 1,000 small Black businesses that are scalable every year? That could be 12 a state getting anywhere between $250,000 to $500,000 to launch. All you have to do is say, hey, we're going to take these 400,000 AKAs and alphas and kappas, in each one of them and say, hey, look, we need you all to contribute $100 a year to this venture capital fund. So you think about that. Then it's not a matter of whether or not the bank is not going to give me a loan, whether or not I need the Democrats to get the SBA to guarantee a loan for me, whether or not I get upset because the wealthy people in the community won't make investments in my venture or what have you. All of that is irrelevant because we can do our things together. So in my opinion, a Trump presidency is constantly telling us Be self-sufficient. Get your own act together. Don't look for somebody else to save you. Whereas to me, a Biden presidency will keep us dependent-minded. Healthcare wouldn't even be an issue if all of a sudden you got all these black people who own businesses. Because here's the thing: people who own businesses have enough money to eat well, to eat healthy, and to pay for health insurance. I don't have to be looking for the government to mandate that somebody provides me health insurance. Or if I'm a black person and there's a party that's telling me you are responsible for your own actions, stay your tail out of jail, or what have you, get your lesson, be in school, don't be a criminal. We're not going to justify criminality. We're not going to massage and be weak on criminals. No, we're telling you, don't be that. Well, guess what? If you don't be that, then what that means is that you then have the ability to get a job with benefits, and you won't have an issue of whether or not I need the Affordable Care Act. I don't need somebody telling me what I have to purchase. If you tell me what I have to purchase, what you're telling me is that I'm a slave. That's a problem. So for me, the pros of a Trump presidency is that a Trump presidency for Black and minority America means that we develop and reinforce an independent, self-sufficient mindset. A Biden presidency is one that infringes on the Constitution, in my opinion, and that breeds weakness and dependence in the mindset. I hope I answered your question.
No, yeah, you definitely did. I mean, it's, man, put in a way that it's funny because you don't, I've heard something like that. Actually, I had a similar thought, but nowhere near as detailed because that was perfect. But I had a similar thought in the sense that when people were complaining about Donald Trump being in office, having a Trump president, oh no, this is the worst for Black people and stuff like that. And I was telling them, I said, well, well, the good thing is that now, at least, I mean, same thing like Malcolm X was saying a while ago. It was like with the I guess conservatives, I'll go back to that. With conservatives, you know who you're dealing with. They're not trying to be your friend. It is basically if they are your enemy, if someone, then they are your enemy. But with the liberals, it's like the wolf and the fox. That's what it was, the wolf and the fox. He was saying, conservatives are like wolves. He's like, you know who they are, you know what you're dealing with, and you know how to, because I know what they are, I know how to adjust, and I don't have to expect really anything from them, except for what I know that they will do. But with the fox, it's slick, it's more sly. It tries to kind of slide in and, oh, let me be your friend and do all this, but it'll stab you in the back, which is more so of the I guess the Democrats in that sense. So the Republicans, like, who you're dealing with. The Democrats, he was saying, they try to be your friend, but they're not your friend at all. They stab you in the back, or they lead you to the open mouths of the wolf. He said, so basically what you're saying, we have to learn to be self-sufficient and not have to rely on whether it be a Democrat or a Republican, but more so just us rely on us building up our own community.
Right. And what that would, for me, what that means is that we end up in the middle, not beholden to anyone, and we really become the power broker. Because then we can say, you need our vote for power. This is the quid pro quo that we need. This is what our community needs. So for instance, Saturday, I had a conversation with a Vietnamese business owner. He told me, he said, Jonathan, I can guarantee you about 100% of the Vietnamese population is going to vote for Trump. And we don't understand. We said, so we're going to vote for Trump because, number one, we live under communism or close to it. We saw what it looks like, and what the Biden presidency is looking very similar. Those policies, that rhetoric is looking very similar because all it takes is for a moment for socialism to slip into communism, right? Because the only difference between socialism and communism is Communism is socialism at the barrel of the gun. In other words, we're going to force you to comply. All right. But here's the thing. He said, it is not in our financial interest as Vietnamese to vote for people who are going to tax us more highly, who's going to take resources from our community and give us nothing back for it. He said, it makes no sense. He said, and he did not understand how our community is so beholden to a party that gives us nothing. We don't get anything. We get handouts that are not enough to be hand-ups. You see, it's not even just enough. They keep us in a just over broke situation. That's a problem to me. Whereas if you are self-sufficient, you can always be more than just over broke. You can flourish. You can empower. You can come together and unify, because I have something that I can unify with you, and now we can multiply that. But to me, a Biden presidency doesn't discuss things that way, and the policies actually undermine our people group, from immigration policy to self-defense policy to police policy. They undermine our group.
And it kind of reminds me of, and not getting anything in return. It reminded me of when Ice Cube was getting attacked, when he was talking with both campaigns.
Right.
And I saw the interview with him and Chris Cuomo. I think I'm saying his last name right. But it kind of almost seemed like an attack then. It didn't even seem like really just him asking, but it's why would you go? Trump isn't really trying to do anything for you. Why would you go and talk to him? All the things that Trump does, he's racist, and why do you think he would even deliver and all of this? And Ice Cube was just basically saying that, hey, I'm going with the intention of getting something specifically for the Black community,
right?
Not for minorities, because we kind of get, typically when it's something for Black people, then they want to throw in other communities, and it gets made. It's like, oh, minority groups, instead of specifically for Black people, like how they have specifically done something for the Native Americans, how they specifically did something for the Jewish community, how they specifically have done things in regards to immigration for the Hispanic community. But whenever it comes to the Black community, it's always, we'll throw in women and also every other minority group and things like that.
Right.
And it's just like, well, no, why can't it just be for the Black community alone?
Right.
And that includes, and I know there are some people out there, because I think Ice Cube did a recent interview when he was talking with, I think, Vivica Fox and I think Lisa Ray. He went on their show, and they were talking about, well, what about women? What about the women? And he was like, aren't you Black? Like, this is a contract with Black America. You are in, when I say Black community, you're included too. Like, so don't split yourself off as if you're different. You are Black.
Right.
He said, so I'm not gonna, he said, so you're in this too. So that just reminded me of that, how he was just attacked on talking with, with the Trump campaign. And I mean, he was just saying, I just want something for the Black community. I'm nothing against the other communities, but this is specifically for us. And I saw Chris's face. It kind of like turned up, like, but why would you say? Almost, it's like, man, that's messed up. Why don't you want to help other people? And I think we've been conditioned to, instead of really specifically helping ourselves, to always help everybody else. Right. So where we still end up being on the bottom, because just like you were saying, other people are coming in and they're kind of like climbing on top. Oh, thank you. As they're moving up.
Right. Well, it's an overused analogy, but it makes the most sense. When you get ready to fly, they tell you, in the case of an emergency, put your own mask on first before trying to help someone else. In the United States, Black America has not put its own mask on first. We don't have a mask on. So we're constantly, acquiescing, accepting other people into our tent. And we don't have enough nourishment in our own tent to be doing it. So it is, I do not fault the Jewish community for fighting for Jewish issues. I do not fault the Hispanic community. And think about it, there are segments of the Hispanic community. You got the Cuban community, which is not the same as the Mexican community, which is not the same as Puerto Rican community. And don't dare get them confused, because they will set you straight.
Yeah.
I don't fault them for fighting for their interests. I'm not concerned about them fighting for their interests. I'm concerned about us fighting for ours. And we keep allowing everybody else to come put their unleavened bread in our dough. You sit and say, well, we need to be focusing on, hey, look, y'all haven't gotten us enough flour, for us to make dough. So stop trying to put everybody else's poppy seed and corn and everything here. No, we're focusing on our dough right now. We don't need their cheese. We don't need their pepperoni. We focusing on our dough right now. Stop trying to mix that up. That's what we need, dough right now. Because it could be that we can make pepperoni. We got cows, we can make cheese, but we need dough right now. Stop messing that up for us. But we are constantly allowing other people to hitch the ride. And like you said, we get pushed down while they climb up. I'm not for that. I'm not for that at all.
For everybody tuning in, I'm speaking with founder and president of Dauntless Tactical Training Centers of America, Jonathan Cross II. Please hit this like button, share, like, because we need more people to see this. This is a conversation that I've kind of been talking about from the beginning of starting this show, that we need to hear. We need, just in a sense, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having emotion, but if we can get more logic in as well, just to kind of strip a little bit of the emotion, just to just see what are the hard facts. And that's kind of what I want to go for. Not kind of, that's what I'm going for with this show. And I appreciate Jonathan Cross for giving us that hard logic and the hard truths. For everyone also that's tuning in, if you want to support a Black business, if you want to get more gear for yourself, and that is from a Black-owned company, go check out Fly Nubian Queen. Get the Fly Nubian Queen gear for the ladies. I'm sorry, specifically. Go to shopfnq.com. That's shopfnq. That way you can get, let me see, I'll put it up there. Shop FNQ. So that way you can support a Black-owned business. You can show other people and ourselves, our own community, that, hey, I support a Black business. I support the Black community. And we're having more so of this solidarity that we do need. We desperately need more of this solidarity. Just like Jonathan was saying, stop worrying about everybody else. Let's start worrying more so about ourselves. Jonathan, I want to ask you another. Do you have some time for a few more questions?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, all right. So when you were talking about with the pros and cons of Donald and Joe, it had me think about, especially being out here now, being in LA specifically, gun control is a huge issue. Is a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people would rather, that I talk to, would rather not have guns at all, or why do we need these guns? We need more gun control. These kids are going to school, they're being shot. People are just going out to these events and they're trying to have fun. And we can't have fun because people are coming in and shooting, and probably lower gun crime as well. But it's they're saying that basically we don't need access to high capacity guns and military rifles. Too many innocent kids, like I said, are being gunned in schools. People gather at large venues and be slaughtered. And it'd be better if we just be safer without them. Other countries like Japan have done away with guns, and the crime rate is way down. What do you have to say to those who can't understand why people are holding so tightly to protecting their Second Amendment rights? It seems so foreign to them. Why are you holding on so tight to it?
All right, so there are a couple of things to that. All right. So first of all, let's start with some fundamental facts. So the first fact is that every individual has the right to defend themselves, regardless of whether we live in a modern society, or whether we were back 1,000 years ago living in a small village in the Stone Age or what have you. Every individual has the right to preserve their own life. All right, and so that's the first fact. The second fact is no individual has complete control over what any other individual will do, whether or not that individual will be civil with them or will be an attacker of them. That is a fact, right? So you can know me to be a polite, pleasant person, but you have no idea whether or not I'm going to, turn from Jekyll to Hyde in any moment and decide that I want to be violent with you, decide that I want to take from you, decide that I want to rape and pillage your family and your village. That is a fact. Mm-hmm. So I have a right to protect myself. I have no control over anybody else, regardless of whether or not we have a mutual understanding that it is wrong for any individual to attack another person. All right. So those are two fundamental facts. But there are some other fundamental facts that we must consider too. All right. So I got the right to defense. I have no control over anyone else. But I also have the right to be creative in my mind. I have the right to invent. Right. So just like you have the right, you have the right to create a poem. You have the right to, have a thought in your mind. You have a right to make a kite and fly it in the air. You have a right to do that, right? You have a right to invent. All of us. So therefore, let's say if you're walking through a forest, you have a right to say, "Oh, I'm gonna pull this tree down or this limb down, and I'm gonna whittle it into a spear." Right? You have the right to do that. You have a right to say, "I'm going to take this vine and I'm going to take this stick and I'm going to bend them together and I'm going to make a bow." In other words, you have the right to invent the bow, to take this natural resource. So you got the right to invent. You have a right to say, "I can pick up this stick and I'm going to take this feather that I found on the ground and I'm going to use it as a fletch in this stick, and I'm going to take this piece of flint and I'm going to sharpen it to a point and I'm going to put it on the front of this and I'm going to make an arrow." You have a right to invent the bow and the arrow. If you have the right to invent, now you have the right to use this tool that you created to protect yourself from the person with whom you have no control, who may do something to you. That's a fundamental truth, right? No one can argue against that as being a fundamental truth and be in their right mind. So that's fundamental truth. The right to protection, you have no control. The right to invent. Okay? Now, so let's come back to the second part of no control. Two people, or well, let me add another right. You have the right to associate with whom you want to associate, right? So you and I could choose to associate together. We could choose to have a set up a village over here, right? We have the right to associate. I'll also then have the right to not associate. I have the right, because here's the thing: if you associate, then you all may, as an association, decide that you want to infringe upon my right to defend myself, right? So which means I must always have the ability to defend myself against those who may choose to associate and come against me, right? Because here's the thing: when you associate, you create a government out of your association. Y'all have a pact, right? So it's just like we talked about before when we discussed the Constitution. Anytime people come together, they have some fundamental things that they agree upon, right? So the thing is, you cannot agree upon something that's going to infringe me. So you cannot agree that, hey, we're going to get together and then we're going to force Jonathan to come into our group, right? You don't have that right. All right. So fundamental truths. This country then has another fundamental truth. The very founding of this country and the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson said, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to break the bands that bind them together and separate themselves from another, they have the right to do that. So when in the course of human events, that history compels us to do that thing, right? So the very founding of this country was based on the concept that a group of people have the right to break off from the control of another, right? And so that group of people broke off from that control. Once it was uttered that they were going to break off, the ones who had the control, who came and said, no, we're not going to allow you, and they had to fight to be disconnected from them. They were exercising the natural right to not be associated. What that means is I can choose to associate with you, but I always have the ability to reserve the right that I do not have to be associated with you if I no longer agree with the rules of the group. So this very country was founded by blood and the use of arms to fight for freedom, to be free, to be disassociated. When they made their declaration, the last straw that caused them to do it is that the government came to remove their arms from them, because the government realized that an unarmed people can always be under subjection. So when the founders of this country prevailed and they wrote the Constitution of this country, they enshrined it in this country by saying they wrote the amendment this way. In fact, I have it on my wall right there. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, to fully understand what that amendment means, then we must understand its antithesis. Since it said the well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, we have to get into examine what is the opposite of a free state. The opposite of a free state is a police state. One where the government has all the power to compel the people to do whatever. But remember, our Constitution says that our government gets its just powers from the consent of the government. Not that the people get its rights from the government. No, the power to the government comes from the people. The people in the 9th and 10th Amendment says all rights not expressly granted to the government are reserved to the people, which means that not all the rights are enumerated there, but all the rights belong to the people. All right, so if the right to keep and bear arms is for the purpose of keeping a free state, then let's understand the antithesis of the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being a threat to the existence of a police state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms must be infringed. So the whole purpose of the Second Amendment, first and foremost, is to make sure that the people always have the right to do as the founders did, which is throw off the bands of government should they so choose to do that. Which means that everybody has an individual right to have the mechanisms to be able to aggregate with other people so that we can throw off the bands of power. What that means then is that I must have an efficient weapon. I must have efficient arms for that. I must have the arms that are suitable for the everyday soldier to have. What the police has, I must have that. Because the power of the police cannot be in its ability to deploy superior technology. The power of the police must be in its ability to come as a posse, to come as more than one to bring me into custody, to make me comply with the law. But here's the thing, 100 policemen or 10 policemen should not be able to overcome 1,000 citizens just because the 10 policemen have better technology than those citizens. You understand what I'm saying? So now, as a citizen, it is harder for me to aggregate 10 people together to fight for a cause than it is for the police to use their radio to call 9 people to come back them up, right? So when if a policeman shows up with 9, those 9 officers should not have the power to overcome 100 people in the community just because they got better weaponry. The people in the community must have the same weaponry that the police have, that the military have, right? So this is not a matter of public safety. It's a matter of rights, and it's a matter of the public always having within its power the ability to break away from the government. Now, we as a collective, we establish a government. We send representatives or what have you for the purposes of establishing policy that's for the general welfare of the people. But the Constitution says that no law that violates the law, the supreme law of the land, can stand. So if the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the Second Amendment is in the Constitution saying shall not be infringed, then it is a superior law to any law that any congressman or municipality may pass that infringes upon that law. All right, or infringes upon the Second Amendment itself. So what does that mean then? That means then that the government has the responsibility to provide protections within the public sphere in the event that somebody goes rogue. So for instance, in this country, it is now the law of the land that you must send your child to school, right? Every child must get an education. And you can't just up and decide, I'm going to homeschool my child. If you homeschool your child, you got to homeschool your child according to some specific guidelines laid out by the local, state, and federal departments of education, right? So either you're going to homeschool them according to that, or you're going to send them to the public school, or you're going to send them to the private school. In the public space, the government has the responsibility, since it is compelling you to bring your children there, to protect them, to provide affirmative protection for them. And it can't do that by infringing on the rights of someone else. Because I can guarantee you, private schools provide protection for their children, right? So private schools provide protection. I know they do because I train security. I literally train threat mitigators for private schools. They provide armed protection. So if somebody were to come there, bent on doing harm, they are going to lay them down before they can do that harm. They do not suffer from a lack of imagination in terms of what the threat is. So by them putting themselves in a position to resist someone who comes to attack, they've created security, yet have not infringed on anybody's rights. So the government does not have the right to infringe upon the right. The Constitution prohibits it. Every individual has the right, what do we say first of all? Every individual has the right to self-preservation. And every individual has the right to invent. And if I invent something, I have a right to share my invention with you. Somebody invented a gun. The gun exists. The inventor of the gun had the right to share with us. I have a right to buy it because a gun is an arm. That makes sense to you. All right. So now when we look at that and we understand that, then we realize, wait a minute, I have an individual right, and I have a right of association. I can choose to associate with my fellow Americans or what have you. And my right is uninfringible. And so if someone decides to come to wherever I am, hold on a second, my battery's running low. I thought I plugged it up. If I have a right to come to wherever I am, then, I mean, if someone comes to wherever I am to wreak havoc, I have the right to stop them immediately. And I must have the means to stop them. And I have the right to say, wait a minute, if the government is going to kick in my door and perform a warrantless search, I have the right to stop the government from doing that. See, if I don't have the power of the government, then I have no way to stop the agents of the government from infringing upon me. Because the Fourth Amendment says the right of the people to be secure in their effects and on their person and in their the privacy of their home, etc. Shall not be a friend. No warrant shall issue without an oath or an affirmation signed by a magistrate. That's the Fourth Amendment. So I can prevent the police from coming in my house without a warrant. How do I do that? I must be armed, and I must be armed at that level. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to firearms, the right is supreme. So the government then must take other steps to ensure public safety, but they cannot ensure public safety by infringing upon the right of the citizen. So every citizen has a right to determine at what level of armament they personally want. Somebody may say, hey, all I want is a revolver. That's fine on you. I'm not telling you you need anything else. It's not my place. You make your own personal decision. At the same time, no one has the right to tell me that I don't have the right to have an AR-15 with a 30-round magazine. I may, for my purpose, where I live, the environment that I'm in, may determine that is the best defensive tool for me. So the thing about a right is unquestioned. A right does not exist if we stick a but or a however, or what if in it. No, a right is sacrosanct, period. Those who do not respect their own rights are setting themselves up to lose them. That's my thoughts on that. I think that people who control businesses, control churches, control schools, corporate campuses, or what have you, those managers and owners, etc., have the responsibility for providing the protection for the people that they are aggregating within those facilities. What they do not have is the right to infringe upon the rights of the individuals in the citizenry or the citizenry as a whole, as a collective. They do not have that.
So for everyone that's joining, I am speaking with Jonathan Cross. He is the founder and president of Dauntless Tactical Training Centers of America. And if you're tuning in, if you're listening and watching this, please hit the like button. Hit the like button, share this so that more people can see what we're talking about here. And it's very important. He was just explaining why there is a need to have the Second Amendment right. That kind of reminds me of just a slight segue of, with anything, there's always, I'm very hesitant, and probably because just from looking at your posts, I learn a lot just from reading your posts on Facebook. But I remember a few years back, there was something in regards to privacy. So I remember there was a show that I was watching, and the guy, I forgot the guy's name who was talking about it, but he was warning against giving up so much of our freedom to where eventually we won't have any privacy anymore. And I remember even, it'll start with, like having the cameras on the phone or on the laptop, and the certain devices are listening to you and other things, even like what was it, Snapchat. You can take a picture, and then the idea was that it'll delete after the person receives it. They can look at it for like 5 to however many seconds, and it'll delete. And I remember when I was talking with my ex at the time, I was just like, I hear what they're saying, but I don't know if I believe it. And to other people, they can be like, oh man, you're being over dramatic, you're being crazy, you're being extremely paranoid. They say to delete, the company will delete it. Why would they keep it? What's the point of them keeping it? Fast forward a year or two later, an article comes out. Snapchat has been keeping the pictures when they were supposed to have been deleting it. And so that kind of goes back to us. Okay, so there was a little slippery slope. You gave an inch, and they took advantage. Because if you think about this company, who is beholden? Who are they beholden to? Outside of just give us your trust. Just trust us, and we'll do right. But if there's no one over them or even none of the people, if the people aren't, if I can't see what you're doing, you can tell me anything, and with that, look at what happened. But anyway, going back to the guy that was talking about the privacy issues, what it can potentially be. Now you fast forward to let me see, just maybe 2 years ago, I remember I was hanging around friends. They were talking about the new Xbox that was coming out. And they were like, oh, we were sitting around and they were so excited. And the only person that wasn't excited about it was me. I was the only person in the room. Oh, man, what's wrong, man? This is amazing. You can sit there and Xbox turn on, and the Xbox would turn on. And I was sitting there thinking, I was like, yeah, that's nice, but then that means it's always listening to you.
Right.
Even when it's not on, it's listening to you. I was like, I don't feel comfortable with that. Then if that's the case, who is listening to me when I'm saying certain things, even though I know it's a gaming company? But I don't know who can have access to that, and especially now with hackers now, who can listen in to whatever's being said. So I don't feel comfortable with that.
Right.
It's a word of fact now. Sometimes if I'm talking to my best friend about something, I'll take my phone and put it in the other room because I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't. I just and it's a very slippery slope now to where now with the new technology that's coming out, to where you can speak to your house. Or you can say something to where, tell everybody we're leaving in 5 minutes, and then, family, your father says you're leaving in 5 minutes. It's very cool. It's very futuristic. It's very cool, but at the same time, it's very scary because you're always being listened to. If I can speak to my house and my house is listening to me, that's dangerous. But that kind of connects back to, I'm connecting it back to what you're saying with this. If we as a country did go forward with, okay, we'll get a little bit of gun control, then what's next? Where do you stop?
Exactly. You end up like Australia with full confiscation, or Canada, which is new now, full confiscation, or the UK, full confiscation. And so now the government has complete control over the people. And people should never be controlled. People should always have the ability to say, I withdraw my consent to be governed. And you cannot withdraw your consent to be governed with a pea shooter.
Yeah.
You must always have the ability. And there are people like, well, the government have tanks and airplanes and all that stuff. But the reality is, if we ever get to the point where the people collectively are saying we are divided, we're going to withdraw our consent to be governed, half the military are going to be thinking the same way. And so you will have people who are going to be driving off of bases with tanks, and they're going to be driving off with Humvees, with rockets and everything. We will end up in a civil war or revolutionary war where the country will be pitted against itself. So all of the weaponry that is available to the government, if we ever got to that point, they will be available to the people. But the people must always have their armaments to be able to start the revolution, right? I'm not sitting here calling for revolution. I'm saying that we must always, and this goes for people all over the world, people must always be in a position to revolt. So you asked about Japan. They are no longer in a position to where they can revolt. So if they wanted to reinstate the emperor system, they could do it, right? Instead of just having a prime minister. If the emperor decided that no, it's going to be the emperor, the same thing in the UK. If the UK decided no, the monarch is now the head of state absolutely and has control over everything, there's nothing the people can do about that. Other countries, it's the same thing. The people in China are not free because they do not have the means to overthrow the Chinese Communist Party. It's billions of them over there, but they don't have the means to rise up and overthrow that 10,000 people who got control of their country. They can't do that. You should never, ever give up the ability to revolt. You must always have the ability to revolt. It literally comes down to that. So in terms of public safety, the institution within the society have a responsibility to provide safety for itself. Walmart must provide armed security and threat mitigation in its own space. The schools must provide it in their spaces. The churches must provide it in their spaces. No one should be ever looking for someone else to come save them.
I wanted to pull up. Actually, this was earlier. Eliza Mack mentioned the only ones we control, and what she was talking about with what she was saying earlier.
Oh yeah, the institutions. Yeah, we only control Greek organizations and houses of worship. We do not control any other institution.
And then there was another comment I wanted to pull up. This is the kind of message that all ADOS Black Americans should listen to and hear every day of the year. So yeah, I agree. This is something that we need to hear, because you don't hear this. It's basically just comply, and everything will be all right. Just whatever that they want to push, even though, for instance, like you yourself, like I'm fighting for the Second Amendment right, but other people, oh, well, just comply. If you just get a little gun control, we're not asking for a lot, just a little bit. You don't need this gun. But then it's just like, well, okay, where does it stop? So everybody's tuning in. Please make sure that you're hitting the like button. Please hit the like button and share this. More people need to see this and hear this. Also, I think you mentioned this. Actually, well, no, you already answered the question about people saying for those who don't want guns, they can choose to not have them. That's their right. And for people who do, that's their right. So I'll just go ahead and go into basically my last question for you that I have is, what is your advice to those who would rather have the government take care of most things, gun control, telling people what is factual or not, and or banning people from posting on social media? And then you were talking on that earlier, giving away their privacy and or rights for the sake of their protection and etc. What's your advice to them?
So I don't tell people what to do with them individually. People have the right to make whatever decision that they make. With that said, this is the advice that I would say. Number one, do not think it is your right to impose your desire to be controlled on somebody else, because they are going to resist you. They're going to resist you with rhetoric, and they may ultimately resist you with force, right? So somebody, if you decide, if you decide, as Ice Cube said, no, to take it with no Vaseline, you decide that you want the government to have complete rule of your life, because that's basically what you're saying. If you decide that that's what you want, understand that there are a lot of other people who are not going to go along with your personal decision. And if you decide that you are going to partner with the government to infringe upon them, be prepared to hear some not so nice rhetoric, and also be prepared to stare down the barrel of the Civil War gun, because that's how civil wars are started. When people decide, when you got some people who say that we want the government to do this and to infringe in this way, to control in this way, and you got other people said, under no circumstances am I going to accept that whatsoever, prepare to have class. So what I would tell them now, if that's what you want to do, you need to go ahead, since you want gun control, you're not going to buy any bullets, but go ahead and buy some beans and buy some medical equipment and things like that, because a civil war will be coming at some point. Accept that in your mind, because there are people who are true believers in natural right, and true believers will never accept the government having the monopoly on the use of force, the government having the monopoly on ideas and thoughts and what is proper to say politically and economically and socially. People are not there. People will not accept that. There are true believers who are anti 1984, the book. There are people who will not accept it, and so just be prepared to understand that if you go down that road and you get a critical mass that go down that road, there will be an equal critical mass who are not going to have it, and that's going to basically create two rams, and you will have conflict. And so such person is going to end up having to take up arms anyway. You see, because then they have to decide whether or not they are going to fight for what they believe in, which is an anarchist, tyrannical, dictatorial government, or they're going to have to decide whether or not they're going to fight for freedom. Because that's a binary decision. It's mutually exclusive. There is no in between. Either government has all power or all the power belongs to the people. Well, I'm like this. All power belongs to the people at all times. That's my thought.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I believe I was talking with somebody the other day, and I want to pull this up. Just give you this. I know I said that was my last question, but this is a question that they had. Let me see if I can find it. They were asking about something in particular with, what is your opinion on how cops are trained and do you feel as though they are being properly trained for the intent to protect and serve?
So I've trained police officers and military personnel. All right. So I'll start by saying that. All right. I can tell you that military personnel approach, number one, the use of the firearm, and I'm gonna bring this to the use of the firearm first, because the problem always arises when there's for the most part, when forces deployed by the police. Excessive force the worst excessive force for them tend to be the use of the gun, with the exception of what we saw with the George Floyd situation. Military, their rules of engagement when it comes to their firearm is they don't touch the gun unless they've been told to go take that here, or bring this person back, search that house or what have you. But their specific rules is don't fire unless fired upon. All right. So they don't automatically go to the gun unless it is very mission specific. The police, on the other hand, have a fear mindset. So you ask any police officer, I bet you can Google it, you can find it anywhere. You would have heard this statement. All police officers say, my number one goal today is to make it home. All right. So they're always thinking about going home. So which means that there is a fear mindset versus a soldier. A soldier knows that they signed up to go to war. They signed up to go face the enemy. So the possibility of death is always there with the soldier. They accepted that early on. Police officer fears death. Soldiers do not fear it. All right. So they have this mindset, then I'm gonna make it home. Police officers are trained to go to the gun almost all the time. So when they walk up to the car, the police officer puts his hand on the trunk, and then as he gets to the side of the car, first thing he does is his hand goes to the gun. Even if he doesn't pull it out, his hand goes to the gun. Right? He's looking at the gun as the lifeline, as the safe, right? He automatically goes to the gun. When the police officer says you're under arrest and we're gonna bring you into custody, if you act like you're not gonna come into custody, regardless of whether you have a weapon or not, what does the police officer do? The police officer uses the gun to force compliance, to bring you into custody, right? So you're not necessarily violent, but they're using the gun to enforce compliance. I said get on the ground, the gun is out. Turn around, the gun is out. You're under arrest, the gun is out. No matter whether you have empty hands or what have you, if you look like you're not going to comply, they're going to force you to comply with the gun, right? Unless they're going to force you to comply with some type of weapon, whether it's their baton, their taser, they are going to use a weapon to force compliance. That's a training problem. Because remember what I said earlier, the power of the police is the ability to come as a posse. So I can't outrun the police's, if police got a radio right here, I can't outrun the police radio, right? If I'm not complying, the police can call some more people to come and hey, 20 of them can show up. 20 people should be able to bring a person who does not have a firearm, or edge weapon or something, some type of weapon. You ought to be able to bring them into custody. But because police go to the gun so quickly, that becomes problematic, and that's how we end up with these problems. But also so that's a training problem. There's a policy problem too, because policies have created scenarios where we have too much interaction with the police. All right. So police, so think about it. We have the word police, we have deputy, we have sheriff's deputy, we have law enforcement. Law enforcement is a relatively new construct in comparison to police, deputy, sheriff, constable, right? Now note the difference. So police means that, hey, I'm looking, I'm walking around, I'm examining, I'm just observing, and I'm being a presence. That's what policing is, right? If I say, somebody says, go police the parking lot, I'm gonna go walk on the parking lot, I'm gonna look, I'm gonna pick up any paper, things like that. I'm policing, I'm observing, I'm there to be a servant. Law enforcement, though, note the phrase. The purpose is not to be a servant. The purpose is to enforce the law. No matter the infraction, no matter how minor the infraction. So hence, a person who's selling loose cigarettes without a tax, the police officer feel I must enforce the law. Now this guy's not really out here doing anything. He's not hurting anybody, selling the loose cool. You see what I'm saying? But because it's illegal, I'm going to enforce the law, and I'm going to use any means necessary to bring him into custody. That's a policy problem. When I was in college, I did an internship at the state legislature here in Tennessee. And that year that I did the internship was the year that mandatory seatbelts came into effect in Tennessee. It passed that session that I did the internship. One of the specific rules about that law was that the use of the seatbelt could not be what's called a primary stop for a police officer. So in other words, a police officer could not be driving down the street, pass you, and see you not wearing your seatbelt and pull you over and issue you a ticket. You would have had to engaged in a moving violation. In other words, you failed to yield. You failed to stop at the stop sign, change lanes without signaling. In other words, there had to be a primary infraction that then allowed them to stop you. They give you the ticket for running the stop sign or the red light or failing to yield. And then, oh, by the way, you did not have your seatbelt on. I'm going to give you this $50 fine for this seatbelt. Somewhere, though, and so that was around 91, 92, something like that. Somewhere in the 2000s here in Tennessee, they changed the law to where a seatbelt could become a primary stop. The purpose of it then was not public safety. The purpose of it was to be able to stop people so that they can then ask more investigative questions. Where you going? Who you coming from? Let me see your license. Let me run for warrant. That's a policy problem because that creates too much engagement unnecessarily. So if I'm a guy who's just driving down the street and I don't have my seatbelt on, like, man, and all of a sudden the guy gets pulled, he's like, man, you pulled me over for this. All of a sudden, so now that's a combative situation, right? Now the guy could be like, man, it's ridiculous that you pulled me over for this or what have you. And now all of a sudden the police officer ramps up. Now, so here again, we got a policy and a training problem, because my expectation is I expect policemen to be professional, because a policeman is a professional. It's a civil servant. And so I expect that no matter who you're dealing with, you're going to have to be nice. You're going to have to be courteous. I'm not expecting you to curse and use the F word here and get your A out here and you don't talk to me like this. No, I don't care how you reacted to me. I'm going to be nice, polite, and professional. Well, sir, I understand that, but I'm going to need you to give me this license. So in other words, the person in the car could be bumping their gum, saying all manner of things. If I'm the officer, I'm just going to write this ticket and say, have a nice day, sir, and go on. I'm not going to get all up in my feelings because I didn't like, oh, you just disrespected me. Really, I don't have to respect you. All I got to do is do what the law say, give you my license, my registration, and sign this ticket. You see? So now that's a policy and a training situation. So if I were political, let's say if I were the mayor of a city, I would have to direct my chief of police. We will not accept unprofessional activity or behavior from any police officer on our force whatsoever. Our police will not be cursing the citizens out. Our expectation is our police will not rile. They're not going to increase the tension just because we got a combative person who's verbally combative, right? State legislature needs to change the laws about what is a primary stop. The politicians need to ensure that the officers will be professional and courteous at all times. You see, that's training. So now, if we do that, we haven't even gotten to the issue of whether or not I need to reach for the gun. You see, you disrespected me as an officer, but that's no reason for me to bring you into custody because you disturbed my peace. Right? I may have peace. I mean, I can get over. You get on about your way. When I get back in my car, I still got peace. Right? So that's an ego thing. That's a training thing. But there's also, so I was training with some police officers about a month ago. And so I'm going to use this training gun again. And so I train primarily my instructor. So my intensive instruction comes from training with elite special forces, specifically instructors from Delta Force. So I've trained with the highest level of instructors. All right. So I'm going to show you something, and it's important for me to show it to you because when I was doing this training with this other police instructor about a month or so ago, it really stood out to me. In the special forces unit, this is a position right here called high ready. All right. This is a position, this is called SEWL or low ready. All right. Or I'm going to stand up. Low ready may be down here. All right. For a police officer, though, this is considered high ready. This is considered low ready. Note that the gun is pointed at the target at all times, right? They on the high ready, note where my finger is. The trigger, when you're on the high ready, the trigger is already out there. This is how we get a police officer doing unjustified shot because you got a training problem. They are training this as the high ready instead of this, right? So I'm in the high ready, a Delta Force or a Navy SEAL guy, when he presents his gun, if he sees a threat, he's right there real quick. You see, that didn't take me but a second. But if a police officer is already right here and he gets a startle, all of a sudden it doesn't take much for him to, you see, that's a training scar. Police officers all across the country are being trained that this is the high ready instead of this being the high ready. You see, that's a training problem. This is how people get killed because police are doing everything at the barrel of the gun. So He made a furtive movement. Boom, I shot him. You know, he reached. Boom, I shot him. But if my gun was here, because here's the thing: if you don't have a gun out, I'm not going to have my gun on you. You understand what I'm saying? If I'm here, it's because you don't have a gun out, right? Right? Or your gun's not up right here, but it's nothing for me to make that move right there. You see, it's nothing. But that gives me extra moment it gives me an extra split second to determine, was this a cell phone in his pocket? Was he just scratching his nose? Did he sneeze when it happened? You see? But no, if I'm already out here, any little further movement, and I pull the trigger. And what happened? Once I pull the trigger, I'm gonna keep pulling the trigger. That's why we see in the video when they shoot, pop, 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 pop. Right? If his partner is there, once one starts shooting, all of them start shooting. That's a training scar. You see, that's a training problem, which ultimately is a policy problem. So I hope that answered your question and gave you some other perspective on it. The issue is the primary stop, the training in terms of professionalism. Yeah, I'm gonna put a wolf out. If I got a wolf problem, I'm gonna put a dog out there to deal with wolves. But wolves are wild, dogs are trained. I do not expect the dogs we put out there to deal with the public to behave like wolves. I expect if I'm gonna put my dog out there, put my sheepdog out there to protect the public. He's gonna call when I call for him. He's gonna sit when I call for him. He's gonna be a professional. He's not going to eat the sheep. Right? He's going to be able to distinguish between the sheep and the wolf. He's going to be, and my expectation is the same thing with the police officer. I do not believe in putting a thug out there as a police officer. In other words, I don't expect police officers to behave like thugs. They must always be professional. Even in other words, honestly, somebody may say this is naive. But this is the standard by which we must require as a society. Police officers better have that Chick-fil-A mentality. My pleasure. You see what I'm saying? Even when dealing with a knucklehead. In other words, James Bond, when he dealt with somebody, James Bond dispatched them, but he did it in style. A police officer can do the same thing. He don't have to devolve to being a thug, a menace to society when he does that. Not at all. That's a training and a policy issue, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, man. I really, man, you're like a well of information, and of course, there's always been a reason why I follow you. But I mean, you basically gave us gems, and I really appreciate that. Or somebody commented, or just not give them weapons at all. But they need weapons. They need to have weapons, just as he mentioned. We need to be armed as well, because that is our Second Amendment right. They shouldn't have technology that is so far superior than what we have. Thank you again. Actually, is there, because I know there's a lot of different, I have your social media that, for people to follow you, but is there something else that you want them to specifically go to? And this is where you can follow Jonathan on Facebook for his Dauntless Tactical Training Incorporated, Instagram at Dauntless Tactical, and his website. Was there anything else that you wanted to add outside of this? I don't know if you had a Twitter, or maybe I missed that.
No, I don't have I have a personal Twitter account. I don't really do a whole lot on it. I should do much more with social, but I've been derelict in that. I've been so focused on the business itself that that I'm anemic, in that area. And often, to a certain extent, on social, I'm actually going to be pulling somebody in to assist more with my social. For me, I'm really all about the training and all about the business. And so, even though I know that's a new thing, in relation to the business, but I'm an older dog. I'm near 50, so I got to be taught a new trick. But But yeah, people can follow me on Facebook, Instagram. My Instagram will become much more lively probably here in the next next few weeks, next few months. Because like I said, I'm gonna bring some people in that who have an expertise in that. My expertise is not in that. I have philosophy about training and things in regard to that. The execution of those other things that have not been at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, well, there you have it. You can follow Jonathan on Facebook, on Instagram. Go to his website. That way you can really see everything laid out. It's extremely professional. As you can see, he's a very professional gentleman. He knows the law and he knows his training, because he wouldn't be able to train if he wasn't as good as he is.
I tell you this. There's not many people. If you know what this is, there's not many people have one.
Oh man!
This
is a battle.
This is a challenge coin.
Oh, challenge coin
given to me by an instructor with Delta Force. Our instructor, I worked with him for 15 days, and straight in the cold. It was cold, and I actually got several, from different units, Navy SEALs ones, Marine Force Recon, Marine Snipers, Combat Divers, U.S. Marshals, and my point in sharing that is the level of training that I've been able to get, and that I can impart to other people is second to none. And if you know anything about Delta Force is higher than SEAL Team 6. Delta Force is the United States' most elite special forces unit. Most people don't know about Delta Force. If you ever saw the TV show the unit was actually Delta Force. It was based on Delta Force, because the unit is actually the unofficial name that they call Delta Force, which is first Special Forces Operational Detachment. But the military has SEAL teams, and then there is SEAL Team 6. SEAL Team 6 is the most elite of the SEAL teams. But then the Joint Special Operations Command and the U.S. Army has Delta Force, and Delta Force pulls their cadre of people from the Army 75th Ranger Battalion, from SEAL Team 6, from Green Berets. In other words, these are the best of the absolute best. And so I've been able to train alongside them and be instructed by them. I'm literally only one of two non-law enforcement civilians to ever receive that training. And the other one is my partner. I sent them to the training after I did it. And they took me in under my recommendation because I did so well in the training.
Wow.
But they were real adamant about making sure that I wasn't going to slow down their class. And so they vetted me pretty well, and talked to my instructors, my prior instructors, who all told them, "No, you can let him in. This guy's not going to slow your class down. He can shoot, and he is not a terrorist." And so I was able to get that training with them, and so my whole approach has been to share that information with the public, especially the people who look like me. And with the Dauntless Tactical Training Centers, I'll be opening them all over the country. With one of my primary missions with that is to empower independent instructors. So I'll be opening some corporate, some other corporate locations, but also franchise, because that's one of the other things. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and for the most part, gun ranges tend to be owned by people who do not look like me. They have typically had a monopoly on the training industry, and they often do not work or cooperate with us. And so, they don't allow us to use their facilities and things like that. And I've developed a platform and a footprint that makes all of that irrelevant, and that will empower entrepreneurial firearms instructors, and especially Black people. And if you're an instructor and you're looking for a place, I have a model that will allow a person to get into the serious business of instructing the population without having to deal with the existing gun ranges. So it's, I have a patent pending shoot house concept in here, and so I'll be opening some in Atlanta probably sometime next year. I may, matter of fact, I may open somewhere between 5 and 10 locations, depending on whether I can, because just the geography of Atlanta is so chopped up, what have you. There's so many people there. But I'll be opening in Atlanta. I've had people asking me about opening in Texas. So I'll be opening. I'll be rolling them out next year and over the following year.
So what is a way that, I mean, outside of people who are there and can take your class, that they can support the business and support themselves also in turn? It's not just really supporting your business, they're also helping themselves. But what's another way that people, the viewers, can support your business at the moment?
Well, at the moment, so all our training is done in this region, primarily. So people, if they want the training, they can come here, because we have our shoot house and we have our outdoor range. And our outdoor range has a 30-person bunkhouse facility with kitchen and bathrooms and things like that. So if people want to come to train, they can actually come. They can book to classes and actually come train with us here. The obviously they could like and share and let the world know that we are here. That's important. We will be putting some product out on the site, shirts and hats and things that represent the Dauntless brand. We'll be rolling some of that out in the coming weeks. And so obviously if people wanted to get swag or some tchotchkes or something like that, they would be able to support in that way. We don't have any investment opportunities or what have you, so I'm not looking for that at this point, although we've had several people want to partner, and we've made some partnerships with some manufacturers and things like that. The key really is for people to get trained. I'm really careful about what I put out in terms of video training, because firearm is such a it's something you have to be so serious about. I've historically have been hesitant about putting a lot of actual how-to out there, because I don't want people to not be supervised and then make a mistake because they misunderstood or something or what have you. In terms of obviously people can support and pray for me. I'm not looking to try to hit people in their pocketbook, or what have you, other than, if you want to train, then we can do that. Now, we do travel, so if a person, like especially if a person had some land somewhere and they wanted, me and my team to come and do a training with them, they can schedule that with us. And, we do that. I go to North Carolina, other places, so, yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem.
Okay. And is there a way that maybe even like a donation, can they donate to your business, or you?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, if people wanted to donate, we would absolutely, accept that. They can cash app me,
Yeah.
And my cash app is $ JW Cross II. So they can cash app me. They could send us funds via PayPal if they'd like it. jcross at dauntlesstactical.com or JW, yeah. Or just shoot us an email and saying they want to make a donation. I'm sorry.
Is that right?
Yes. Make the I have found with Cash App, if all the letters are not capitalized on mine, it doesn't show that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry.
No, all the letters aren't capitalized, right?
Yeah, they should all be capitalized.
Oh, they should all be capitalized. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So just so everybody know, they should all be capitalized when you're trying to help Brother Cross out here. So just like this, it should
just
all
like
be capitalized. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Jonathan. I really appreciate it, man. You are a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate having you and Frank W. Johnson, because you both know so much, and you bring a voice to, I guess, the median that people can hear that we don't really hear a lot. So I really do appreciate you taking the time out, because I know you're extremely busy with your business, and it's going really well. So I'm definitely, I'm in full support of what you're doing and your goal, and also encouraging people to become more knowledgeable of the law, not becoming so emotional, and to also try to be more self-sufficient. So I really appreciate that voice that you have, that you are contributing out there. And I know it's typically a lot of people that try to buck back against it because they're, going off their emotions. But, I appreciate you sticking to your guns, no pun intended, and and just speaking your truth, and just giving out facts. So I really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I'm humbled that you allowed me to speak with you and invited me on the show and to speak with your audience. I do not take that for granted. So I thank you for the opportunity. And again, it's a humbling experience.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd love to have you back if you have the time to come back. I would definitely really appreciate having you back here soon, and just so that everybody can see the website that I'm talking about with Jonathan Cross here. Let me see. This is what it looks like. So when you go to his site, this is what it looks like. It's very clean. You can start your training there. All the different courses. It has about us, about the instructors, the concepts of the training, everything that you would need to know is on this website here. And like I said, it's very professional. It's very clean. It was, when I went on the website, it was very easy for me to navigate. And I definitely want to call that out, because a lot of people put stuff up and they kind of just kind of half do it, but you really, went above and beyond to have it clean, very understandable. I can easily navigate it and figure out what I'm looking for and why I'm doing it. So I want to say I appreciate you for that.
Well, I'll certainly say this. This isn't my first business. I operated a recording studio for 15 years, back from the late 90s to about 2007. So I actually ran it for 17 years. And my mindset about Black businesses, number one, we must always be excellent. Always. I mean, we cannot, I don't believe in a business being ghetto, in terms of what we look like, our imaging, everything must be clean, must be corporate, because we have to overcome the expectations that society has that we're not going to do things well and with excellence. So for me, for everything from my branding to my look, to the cleanliness of our facilities, everything, is that is incredibly important to me. I mean, I think you probably saw when I posted the other day, giving people a sneak peek. I posted a picture of the restrooms in the new facility, so that the ladies could know, we've taken great care to provide a very clean, very comfortable, experience. So I mean, as a matter of fact, some people laugh, but if, like, when a woman comes in our facility, I want her to be tempted to actually sit on the toilet seat, not just have to hover. And that, that's a high standard for me, which means that the bathroom must be, clean. It must be fresh. It must be, sanitary at all times. The same thing happens to me in terms of the look of the facility. It must be clean. Our logo, everything must be clean. The website, everything must be clean. It should not look like ultra strength weapons. There's a difference between, I mean, if you take, I worked in the music industry for so long, so if you take a look at the LaFace logo, it was so clean. It represented, it was an example of the quality of the music that they put out. It was clean. You could take a LaFace record and logo, and you could take Verge record logo, and you couldn't distinguish between the quality, of them. To me, when a Black person does business, we must be absolutely excellent in everything we do. The first impression must be awesome, and our service must meet that. And so that's just my mindset. So the website to me is just an example of that same mindset. Again, like I said earlier on, leadership establishes the culture of any institution. And my mindset is, we're going to be clean, we're going to be professional, we're going to have a high standard, so that when we execute, it's that way. I mean, I don't think you can see now, but like if you see that wall, people walk in, they want to see the level of training. Things must be clean. I mean, that is just, that's just crucially important to me. So everything I do, I'm going to do it to that standard. I just can't do it any other way. It must do it to that standard.
I appreciate it, man, because I think people like you helped inadvertently rubbed off on me in many different ways. So I definitely appreciate that. And everybody, if you can, please give Jonathan Cross II a digital round of applause. I really appreciate having this man here, taking his time out of his day to do this. And please hit the like button, share again, so that way people can see this, because this message needs to get out. And another digital round of applause for this gentleman. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know you had somebody coming through today, so I'll definitely let you get back to that. And please feel free to come back anytime. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Just note for your record, Monday is my admin day, so I don't train on Monday unless I have a specific private setup. So Mondays, for future records, Mondays do work well for me.
Oh, okay.
So Monday it's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, I don't know. I didn't think it was. I think it was that you had somebody coming in to bring supplies or something or something like that. Right.
Yeah, I have a vendor coming in that's looking to do a partnership with a new shooting product, but we've actually scheduled that for tomorrow.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for clearing out that space to have this here. So. Again, please feel free to come back and thank you again. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, hit the like button, leave your comments, let us know what you thought about this episode, and we'll see you the next time. And follow Dauntless Tactical Training. Go to the website, go on Facebook, Instagram, follow this man, and give him your support. Thank you, Jonathan.